Welcome in, everybody. I am Ben Parker. That is Shane Ratliff. This is Pro Football Enterprises. We do this in correlation with the Box Score Network as well. Privileged to have you all on. We are proud to present Jacoby Lane tonight, wide receiver from Southern Cal. Austin may also join us here in a few minutes. We'll get his work in as well. Let me set the table, and then Shane, I'll kick it to you. Get your first thoughts here on Jacoby Lane. Height 6'4", weight 195. I've got both his 24 numbers and his 25 numbers. So here they are. 24 had 43 catches, 525 yards, 12.2 per catch, and 12 touchdowns. 2025, the catches are up at 49. The yards are way up at 745. The yards per catch are up at 15.2. The touchdowns take a big hit at 4. And then for those of you that care about the 40-yard dash and the RAS, he had a 4.47 in the 40-yard dash and a 9.38 RAS score. So Shane, as always, proud to have you on board. Take it away. Give us our first thoughts here on Jacoby Lane.
So I think the first thoughts that come up in this one, Ben, is you mentioned just the sheer height number. He's true 6'4". He also in that, like you said, if you're a 40 guy or not, 40-inch vertical at the combine. So it's hard if he's standing still to throw a ball over the top of him. That's his game. Red zone, competes well for the high ball. The thing, though, you mentioned 6'4", they have him anywhere between 195 and 200 pounds. That's really small when you're that tall as a wide receiver on the outside these days. Um, he's a guy we studied early on in the beginning of the year before this college season happened. We were looking for him to kind of explode. Some of his numbers did, but I don't feel he's one of the guys where I went back and watched tape and I wasn't happy with kind of how the process worked out for him. Now, it's hard to say where some of these things happen, catches coming away from him, other things like that. But he got more targets this year. The big number that jumps out to you is 12 touchdowns a year before, down to 4 this year with more catches and more yards. Some of the things that jump out when you look at him, I mean, there's literally no route tree. He does red zone catches. They don't try to ask him to do much more than that. Has a ton of drops for uncontested catches. He's one of those guys where if you throw the ball up and he's got to jump ball it and jump between two defenders, he'll catch that ball. The slant you throw to him when he's open, he's going to drop that one. He's had problems with concentration in his hands throughout his career. For a bigger guy, lighter weight, there's no blocking. Doesn't seem like he's interested in it. Doesn't have the technique for it. Doesn't want to be a part of it. I already mentioned it once before, but when you watch the tape, it's not like he's catching more double coverages than he did the year before, and it's not like they figured out how to defend somebody that has a 40-inch vertical leap and who's 6'4". But his touchdown numbers went way down, and you don't normally see it where somebody's catches go up, their yards go up, and then the touchdown is the one that goes down. So I mean, you can't teach the physical gifts that he has, but I think the speed doesn't put him in an upper echelon. No interest, as I mentioned, in blocking. A route tree that's going to have to be almost completely developed at the NFL level. And as I say pretty much every time, I don't think the NFL does a good job of developing anyone. It's not what they're there for. Um, I see a guy who's, in my mind, his draft stock dropped from the beginning of the year to this point right here. And I think the only thing that really helped him is that 40-inch vertical leap. He did have a really good Senior Bowl, and the word out of that Senior Bowl is that he's been doing a lot of work with TJ Hushmanzada to try to pick up some of these other things. A lighter, taller guy that can kind of help him figure out how to do some other things. The tape at USC doesn't show it to me, so I hope that he continues to work with him and that helps him. But he's a guy that dropped in my draft board throughout this season.
Excellent work, Shane. Austin, welcome aboard. Always a privilege to have you. Go ahead and give your first thoughts here on Jacoby Lane.
Yeah, right on time, as right as
Right
anticipated.
on time.
Yeah, Jacoby Lane is one of those guys who I kind of forgot about because when I watched his teammates tape, and this is something I talk about all the time, when I notice you when I'm watching someone else, that's how I know you're like gonna be a dude on my board at least. Maybe not like, at the very tip top, but you're gonna be a dude who I'm like, yeah, I've got you higher up than consensus. And Jacoby Lane appeared very infrequently when I was watching his teammate, Makai Lemon, when I was watching his tape. I wasn't like, oh, who's that? Oh, that's Jacoby Lane again. That just wasn't happening enough. And it did happen every once in a while. I'm not gonna pretend like he didn't make any good plays. But that not happening enough is a big red flag for me. And then I got into his actual tape, studying him closely, and it just wasn't what I had hoped it would be. He does have a really nice long frame, and I do think even though he's right around 200 pounds, he measured at 200 pounds at the combine. I don't think it's the worst lightest like 6'4", 200 I've ever seen. He is a little narrow in the hips, but it's not like anything crazy where he looks like a complete twig out there. And I do think he is actually really shifty for his size.
Hmm.
What you were talking about, Shane, with the drops on the like uncontested targets, yeah, that's absolutely there. And it's more with anytime a pass was behind him, I
Hmm.
felt like he had a really hard time or did a bad job adjusting to a pass thrown behind him and kind of reaching back there and securing it. I thought if a ball was thrown like too high, he could go up and get it. It was like the passes that were thrown behind that were giving him a real issue. As far as separation goes, I thought he was pretty good at those like quick slants and things like that. And I thought his deep ball tracking was really good. But as you mentioned, it's not a very diverse route tree. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. And when I did see him try run a more complex route over the middle, it didn't look good. I thought he had some decent work on like outbreaking routes along the sideline. I thought his boundary work was pretty good. I think he has generally pretty good like body control and awareness and things like that. I think he has really good hand usage in those like kind of stop and comeback groups. I think he's able to like break off guys pretty well at the top of his breaks and in the end zone that shows up a lot. Like especially against smaller corners, he definitely uses his size and strength against smaller corners. And then I really liked his work on scramble drills. I think that was honestly like one of my favorite things to see. I think showing the ability to run a good scramble drill as a corner just shows you have good instincts and feel for the game. And I think a lot of this other stuff can develop later. And so when I saw that, and his ability to kind of read zone coverage compared with the testing numbers I saw at the combine, he did kind of spring back up my board a little bit. I was pretty low on him. I was thinking like fifth round, even low at one point. And I saw the combine numbers; they were better than I anticipated based on like his field speed. It didn't look like he was going to run in the 4.4s, and he ran in the 4.4s. And then he jumped 40 inches, and he measured at 200 pounds. So I was like, okay, let's bring him back. And now I'm a little more comfortable with him. But there absolutely are a ton of problems, and I'll get to more out of those on my second pass.
All right, Austin, excellent work. I did too many notes on Jacoby Lane, despite my best efforts. So I'm going to read through about two-thirds of them, hand it back over to you guys to hash over, and then I'll drop my last little bit when it comes to my turn again. Okay, so the tape I studied, I watched the highlights as always to see what he looks like when he's at his best. I watched the Michigan tape, the Notre Dame tape, the Illinois tape, the Iowa tape, the Oregon tape. So I got a chance to watch him against all of the best teams, the best defenses. Here we go. Yak, it's good, not great. Frequently does make people miss. You can see that on the Michigan and Notre Dame tape, but he does not have the elite speed or the explosion to really punish them for it. So he can make people miss, but he can't explode to get a lot of yardage. But he doesn't go down easy either. Hands, I thought they were good, not elite. He did have, depending on how you count it, between 4 and 5 clear drops at 6.5, 9.3 drop rate again, depending on how you count it. But like you guys, I noticed, Austin, you said passes behind him. I agree. I also saw passes that were low. He really struggled
Mhm.
with anything that was low, like at his knees. There were a couple of those in the Iowa game for sure. Everything else, though, if it's about waist high, or if it's higher, the higher it gets, the better he is at ripping it away. So that's kind of where I've got his hands. They are strong and soft. He will make tough catches. He looks natural, but again, anything behind him or low, it's going to be a little bit of an adventure for sure. The routes, I thought the routes were solid. The footwork is decent, but not exceptional. Again, I saw ends, I saw fades, I saw fly, I saw hitch and go, I saw corner, I saw wide receiver screen, all decent. But again, you guys mentioned that the more complex the route, and especially the more complex over the middle, the less comfortable he looks at that. Definitely not a natural kind of a route runner at all. And often he was used as a decoy for both the run game and the short passing game. That was not the case in 24. They made a big attempt to be different this year on offense. A lot more physical running the football and a lot more passes over the middle featuring Mekhi Lemon. A lot of times they just had Jacoby Lane either as a decoy off to the side boundary or even up 10 yards, again, off to the boundary. Really used him a lot more in that way this year. Speed, athleticism, it's good, not great, especially on the speed side. Again, he can cut and make people miss, but not explode. So that's a bit of a limitation there. The fantastic vertical jump, it already showed up on tape. You can see it at the 24 tape and the 25 tape. And I really didn't need the combine measurement to see that he just has a top vertical jump. It really comes in handy. Shane, you mentioned it, especially in red zone. Against zone, he can work zone productively, but he's much better at sitting in a hole in the zone than he is at ripping through one. Anybody can rip through a zone to some degree, but really he's better at notching in, finding a hole. One thing I really liked about him, you look at his season, his numbers got better the second half of the year against the tougher teams. And I mean the teams I just listed, the Notre Dames, the Iowas, the Oregons. The deeper in the season he got, his numbers got better. They were never explosive, right? You don't ever see, hardly a 10 catch, 150-yard game, right? But you can see the tougher the opponent, his numbers hold up. They get actually a little bit better than they were in the earlier part of the season. A couple of other notes here. I'll get it back to you guys. Versus man, he has the speed and size to win over the top versus press, but that's not how he'll make his living. He can do that some. He can win inside on off man. When they try to play him off, he does have a decent in route that allows him to win there as well. You saw a lot more of that in 25 than we did in 24. And listen, he was open a lot more than he got the ball. All good receivers can say that. I mean, every decent receiver who's going to be drafted anywhere in the first 3 rounds of the draft, they're always open more than they actually get the ball. And that was true of him as well. So I've got another whole section here, but I want to get back into you guys' game here. Shane, second round of thoughts here. We can hash over anything you want to here on Jacoby Lane. And also go ahead and start introducing the idea of where you would be drafting him.
Okay, so I think some of the things Austin mentioned are very important that you kind of covered again as going over your notes, Ben. I think off the snap, he does a good job of getting open. The problem is, like Austin said, he's 4.47. If he was a little bit faster with what he has, you can see him break open on a couple of these. He didn't really pull away from anybody for me. I do understand it's hard as a wide receiver to be able to show your talent when your receiving partner is the top choice in your thing. The problem that's going to hurt him, though, is that Ohio State has proved year after year that you can have about 3 number 1 guys on your receiving team, and they each have an ability to show out. I think you mentioned he does play up to competition, which is going to help him. There is a competitive fire there. He doesn't show it in blocking. He doesn't show it some places where you'd like him to. But when he goes against better people, he wants to compete. He wants to show that he has the talent level. Austin mentioned him maybe as low as the 5th round. I legitimately think he's a 3rd or 4th rounder. He's a guy that if wide receivers catch fire and people start stacking him up, he's a guy that's going to get a look. Austin mentioned the frame. Yeah, I agree with him. He's not like a baby deer. This isn't a guy that looks like toothpicks out there. But if you're not going to be the fastest, you already obviously have some physical lower body strength. It's not going to hurt him to put a couple of pounds on because he wasn't going to run by anybody anyway. So if you can kind of add physicality to that. The statement I think was most important that Austin made, those sideline catches, he does have a real feel for that. There's an element for his body awareness with the ball high, or when he's set and has to reach and drag his feet, he does an excellent job for that. You both hit on that when he's reaching behind him after on slants, crossing routes, when the ball's behind him, it's just not natural for him to reach back. Um, I think the low ball is a lot of people's difficulty. And like you said, Ben, if you're waist up and the higher you go, the easier it is for him to get. Those are the skills he's looking for. But I think talent wise, he's an NFL wide receiver. But I mean, on pretty much every team, you're going to see him as he's going to be like a number three best because the tree just is not developed enough. Um, you can run him red zone. You can play him as almost like a tight end light, a Y spread. But I don't see a lot of spots for him in the NFL that open right up right away where you go, hey, this is a guy where I see him in this offense. They've done this with other people. He fills right in. So, like I said, I think he's a late third, fourth round guy, unless the wide receivers just absolutely fly off the board this year.
Very good, Shane. Back to you, Austin. Same thing. Anything else you want to hash out, and then where you would start drafting them out?
Yeah, so there are a few negatives. I think his in-game speed so much slower than his 40 time, which is a negative for me, but it does show that at least he ran like because if it wasn't for the 40 time, if he didn't run at the combine, I would have had him down as like a 4.62 uh type of guy. Like I'm not going to try and pretend like I saw him running really even in the fives, much less the fours.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but uh, it showed he has that ability at least, which I'm thankful he did, and that definitely helped him creep up my board a little bit, as I talked about. But on the field, he looks pretty slow and lumbering at times, at most of the time, I should say, actually. Production isn't that good, unfortunately, especially on the touchdowns this most recent year. He also has some really cool releases, and his I think releases as a in general are good, but he has some of those like super flashy TikTok. I call them the TikTok releases. I think a lot of people use that term these days, where it's like, oh yeah, that looks really good in one-on-ones, but like in game, they're not usually super useful. And he does a bit of those, I thought at times. And then his yards after catch are just really, really low. Only 3.0 yards after catch per reception last year, which was second lowest among the wide receiver class. So Yak is just not an area of strength for him, even though I do see some of the short area quickness and he has the size to where I would think it might be able to develop, but it just hasn't been realized yet. And just overall, his sort of intermediate routes are just general bad against man. Like he has really poor ability to just break off a route that's not a quick slant or a quick out or just a go ball or maybe like a comeback. Like anything other than that against man coverage, it's a really tough sell for me to try and say he's gets open on those at all. Overall, I talked about how I had him like as low as like fifth round at one point before I saw some things that brought me back up. I'm right around where you are at Shane, and I think a lot of it comes to my draft comp for him. He reminds me a lot of Romeo Dobbs coming out, and Romeo
Mm,
Dobbs was another similar guy to me, a bigger guy, a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter, and a little bit stockier, but not by too much for Dobbs compared to Jacoby Lane. But another guy who kind of relied on physical tools against. He was in a slightly worse competition, but relied on physical tools more so to win than actual any route technical abilities, and then also just had some really good highlight plays, contested catches, and things like that, similar to Jacoby Lane. I find these prospects of Dobbs as a prospect, not what he's turned into, and Lane very similar, which gives me hope because Romeo Dobbs is now a very capable wide receiver in this league, who has been around and will continue to be around for a long time. So Dobbs was a fourth round pick. I think he was picked like one in the 120s. And that's ultimately about where I've landed on Jacoby Lane. An early fourth round pick, I would be happy with.
Both of you are more where the majority of mock drafters are right now. That was largely true even back in the summer when we talked about him. I'm still higher on him than most people are. I'm still second round grade on him because of the things that I value and I like. But you guys are more in line with what most people are saying right now who are doing this kind of thing. Let me hit the last of my notes, and then if any of y'all want to get back in, you can. Um, let's start with the blocking here. Shane already mentioned it. It does range from good to terrible, more on the terrible side. It's very inconsistent. The effort is inconsistent. The technique is never great. It's always kind of lousy. But there are times he blocks well. You can see times where he gets after it. He'll put a lick on somebody. It's just so inconsistent, and the technique's never great. So because of that, he just cannot get a good blocking grade, even though there are times where it's there. Let's go back to the size and physicality. It's excellent. He can play above the rim. You see it all over the tape, especially in the 24 tape. He can win the 50-50 balls. A lot of his touchdowns disappeared because they did not use him in red zone as much as they did in 24. You can see that clearly in a lot of these games. There's a lot of game snaps, and I don't mean like 5 or 6. I mean 25 snaps that I saw where they're at the 5-yard line, the 2-yard line, and they don't even run him into the end zone on a route. They literally have him stop at the line of scrimmage close to the boundary so that Lemon can go into the end zone or so that they can run the football. They really were trying to do a lot more of that this year. That's where a lot of his touchdowns went this year. They just really did not even utilize that. So that's why he shrinks from 12 to 4. Having said that, though, you guys are all over it. There is no in-game speed or explosiveness here that would vault him up into an area where people really covet him and his game. And that's really the great limitation here. He's got the size. He could bulk up a little bit more from a muscular standpoint. He's got the 24 tape that showed he can physically dominate at times, especially in the red zone. But there's no explosion here. A lot of that yak yardage this year, again, you can see it on the tape. They asked him to sit right there at 5-yard depth. That's where they asked him to sit on a lot more snaps this year while they ran Lemon more at the 15s. So that's why a lot of that yak is sitting down there. Having said that, though, there's just no way that you can get him up in the first round, even though I like him at the second round here. Last thing I will say, he helped Mekhi Lemon out a lot. You can see this in the Illinois game especially. He missed almost the whole first half of the Illinois game, which Mekhi Lemon struggled in. The entire offense struggled in. He gets in the second half. Illinois has to start giving more attention to Jacoby Lane. Mekhi Lemon just lights it up in the second half of that game, and the USC offense just tears into it. That was a microcosm of Jacoby Lane's season, to be honest, where he's just not being the primary guy, and with good reason. Mekhi Lemon should have been the primary guy. There's no question about that. But had Jacoby Lane been on another team where he was primary and had a decent second man, he would have easily captured 1,000 yards. He already picked up 745 just being the second dog on the team. So that's where I'm at on Jacoby Lane. I love the fact that we've all got you guys have one kind of the side of it here, and I have a different one. Any final thoughts before we kick out on Lane here? All right.
I think the one
Austin?
that's going to hurt him the most is the number that Austin brought up. When your yak yardage is less than what your height is as a wide receiver, you're going to be a hard spot. I think that really hurts. I think Austin has a great cue on Dobbs being the kind of the clone. If you're Jacoby Lane, you'd love to have what's happened with him.
Yeah.
I think the only thing is the drops scare me in this situation. I think it's going to be something that's going to continue on through his pro career.
Austin, final thought here?
Yeah, overall, it's a player you're betting on development, which I think is worth a swing in these middle rounds, especially at a premium position like wide receiver. I am not afraid to take the occasional swing for the fences.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Again, one of the great parts of this show that we do is we have 3 different people on here. So we very rarely, all 3 of us, miss something about a player. We may not always agree, like tonight. Sometimes we do. We're all dialed in on the same things in a player. but you get three different opinions here, and we do not try to harmonize those opinions. They are what they are, and all three of us do a very good job with that. So Shane, Austin, thank you very much. Everybody appreciate you listening. If you do want to catch more of the defensive prospects, go over to the Box Score YouTube channel. We have a whole bunch of defensive prospects over there. Thank you and goodbye.